Hey, what's up? It's Fred and welcome to the Shed. Today we're going to try something a bit different and talk about a movie. That's right, your buddy Fred is now a movie reviewer. So Dave Grohl, who of course we all know from the Foo Fighters and Nirvana, just released a brand new movie called What Drives Us. It's available on Amazon Prime if you haven't watched it yet. When I heard that it was a documentary that not only focused on touring, but specifically on touring in a van, I knew I had to watch it. Touring is a topic I've been thinking about a lot lately because as a musician, one of the things I've missed most in the past year and a half is going out, seeing all you guys, and playing music. And there's something about the experience of hitting the road in a van that for me is particularly exciting. It can be long days, stress, traffic, there aren't a lot of comforts, but it's also one of the most rewarding feelings in the world. So even though it's something that I cherish and miss very much, it comes with its share of hardships. When you're a touring musician, as I was for many, many years, you're away from your family, and if you have kids, you're gonna miss some milestones, and you might even ask yourself if it's worth it. I wrote a song about this that just came out. It's called Right I Left, which is currently on all streaming platforms.
I left my home and headed west.
So let's get into this film. The movie starts out with Dave Grohl driving his old van around. It's the first van the Foo Fighters ever toured in. Apparently, even though Dave was in Nirvana, he still wanted the first Foo Fighters tour to be in a van. I kind of think that rules because to me, being in a van is the best way to bond with your bandmates. And they kind of make that point in the movie. Especially in the days before smartphones and AirPods, the van forced us to all listen to the same music on the stereo for hours, which prompted conversations about the music we loved and hated. If your bandmates hadn't heard your favorite record, they would probably hear it several times throughout a 1-month van tour. So that could help you be more on the same page with each other musically. You could also be discussing the shows, how did last night go, what could we do better tonight. There's a lot of late night conversations that are had because you're all stuck together in a confined area. I think this movie could have hit home even more with these points, but I loved what Kira Watt from Black Flag said when she discussed being in a band like having a marriage between all the bandmates. You're living together, you're working together, playing the songs, and you're becoming a single functioning unit. And I've always kind of looked at it the way she said it. It's like being married to 4 people at once. The van is a great situation for chemistry and bonding to happen. And if it isn't going to happen, I've had situations where one person isn't gelling with the rest of us. Van life weeds that out pretty quickly. This movie is a must-see if you're a fan of the huge bands, Foo Fighters, Red Hot Chili Peppers, U2, Metallica. There's a funny part where Lars from Metallica says, "I never actually toured in a van. Can I leave now?" There's also a lot of cool dialogue from Steven Tyler, Ben Lee, Dave Lombardo from Slayer, Mike Watt, and Annie Aaron Clark, also known as St. Vincent. She, I think, actually had the most accurate insight of anyone in the movie. Maybe I felt that way because she was younger and had probably toured in the van most recently out of everyone. She was describing van life as a bunch of pirates driving around the country, and I could totally identify with that. There's no comforts. You're sleeping on people's floor. I slept in the van for weeks on end. Showers do not happen every day, not even close. I loved that several bands mentioned eating peanut butter and jelly because that's half of what you live on in the van. I think what resonated with me the most in What Drives Us is there's obviously some drawbacks to touring in a van. And when you're in a small band, there's absolutely no guarantee that you'll eventually succeed. Most bands do not succeed. So why do we put ourselves through it? Well, they make the point in the movie that the reward, or what we get out of it, is simply the experience itself. And I don't think I realized until I watched this movie how much I had in common with all these other musicians. You know, many of us that do this, we started out just trying to escape our small town. You know, the Edge from U2, Brian Johnson from AC/DC, they talked about how there wasn't a lot of opportunity where they grew up. And that was definitely the case for me. I wanted to see the world. I wanted to experience things that were completely different from what I knew. I also love this one part. There was a montage where each person was asked, "Did you ever feel like giving up?" And they all sort of thought for a minute and were like, "No." And that was kind of neat. If there was anywhere I think this movie fell short, I think I was expecting them to focus even more on actual van life. There was a lot of other stuff in there that was really interesting, but it didn't really relate to the van. I did my first cross-country tour in 1997, and the majority of my touring years were in a van. Taking Back Sunday and Say Anything were both on buses when I toured with them, but the rest of the time, the Lemonheads, The Color Fred, Breaking Pangea, that was all in a van. And I actually prefer it, as weird as it sounds. The main difference between touring in a bus and touring in a van is that touring in a van, you get to experience more of the world between each city. Because in a van, you're doing the driving, you're seeing everything, you stop when you want to stop. A bus moves while you sleep, and you wake up outside the club every day. So they had some people in the movie that still tour in vans, Mike Watt, L7, but I felt like some of the huge bands in the movie just weren't in touch with their van years anymore. It was basically all these older bands in their 50s and 60s that were so far beyond the van that I don't think they can remember what it actually felt like. And they did throw in two young unknown bands that were 20 years old, but the one band just rented a van and their dad drove them around. They were cool as shit, but there are just so many bands in our scene, like punk and hardcore, that have spent their lives touring in vans, and I would have liked to have heard from more bands like that. Probably my favorite part of What Drives Us was when Ian MacKaye from Minor Threat and Fugazi, who we all know is a mandatory figure in any of these punk documentaries, he explained initially how the punk rock touring circuit got set up. And I read about this in this book, Our Band Could Be Your Life by Michael Azerrad. And this is a great read if you like any of the bands in it. It's a lot of the main punk rock bands from the 1980s. He talks about how the band DOA, who were Canadians from Vancouver, they started touring in 1979, and they started cataloging all the clubs and bars that would allow punk bands to play. They also kept phone numbers of any punk houses or people that would let them sleep on the floor. They wound up touring with Black Flag, and they shared these phone numbers with Black Flag, who then took it to a whole nother level, went crazy, expanding on that. Black Flag left home and basically paved the way for everyone else. Greg Ginn, their guitarist, of course, started one of the seminal record labels of that time, SST Records, where he put out Bad Brains, Descendants, Husker Du, Soundgarden, Dinosaur Jr., Sonic Youth, the list goes on. All in all, I think the movie What Drives Us was super entertaining. If it's talking about music, I tend to enjoy it anyway. It's nice to see other musicians' point of view, especially people that I look up to. There's a funny scene where one of those young bands are driving around in Dave Grohl's van, and he's driving, and it must have been so crazy for them. Shit, we're in a van with Dave Grohl right now. The last thing I'll say is there was a good bit of concert footage from all the bands that were in it, and it just made me miss concerts so much. Not just playing them, but going to them. I love live music, and man, I miss it so much right now. So you can let yourself forget about it for a while, but then I see something like this, and I'm like, man, I am so excited for the next time I get to go to a show. It's going to be so sweet, and I can't wait. So thanks so much for watching, guys. Remember to check out my new song about touring called Right I Left, out on all streaming platforms right now. This was a very personal song for me, and I put a lot into writing it. My band, the guys in The Color Fred, did an amazing job, and I'm extremely happy with how this song came out. Please let me know in the comments what you thought of the song, if you saw What Drives Us, or if you want to hear my take on any other movies. As always, thanks for supporting everything I do, and I'll see you guys on the next one.
I wonder, is it right I left? What is the damage when I get back? They say time heals, but this time